Today on Together, you're in for a treat. Renowned West Michigan therapist and Ada Bible attender Mario Franciscotty stops by again and is bringing his spouse. We'll be diving into the intricacies of their marriage, as well as gathering some great advice on how the DiSC personality assessment looks from an applicable standpoint as we bring this series to a close. Welcome the Franciscotty family on Together.
This is Together, an Ada Bible Church podcast about the world of marriage, where we attempt to invite you to explore the ways that marriage works and doesn't work. From practical ways of learning to biblical inspiration, we invite you to listen to other professionals and couples to help enrich your marriage. Here are your hosts, Samuel Jones and Dr. Kelly Bonnywell.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Together. Again, this is one of your hosts, Samuel Jones, and I am excited today because we have two amazing guests that will be coming on in just a second here. But just so you all are aware, we did what's called the DiSC series a couple weeks ago, 2 in a row. We took a slight break and talked about emotional struggles in marriage, but now we're back to bring the closing of this series on the DiSC. Now, just in case this is your first time checking us out on Together, which is an Ada Bible Marriage podcast, we want to just kind of explain again, or I want to explain again what the DiSC is, just to bring back to memory and or help you know for the first time what we're going to be talking about in relationship to our guest today. So the DiSC is a personality assessment that most often is used, in the professional arena, business arena, but we also can help use it in an individual context, and especially in the context of marriage. So with the DiSC, it is described as an acronym. D stands for dominance. And with dominance, it has to do with, individuals who are more strong-minded, assertive or aggressive. They're fast-paced, typically kind of skeptical, and often enjoy challenges, taking action, and, kind of reaping those immediate results. So if you find yourself kind of being more extroverted, you're probably in that dominance D spectrum. And then after that, there is what's called an influencer, or someone who does things through influence. That covers the I in the DiSC. Again, this person is very fast-paced as well, but they're more accepting. So, for example, you'll see someone who's very sociable, a socialite in the parties, hanging out with people. In fact, they would be called people. And in often cases, they prefer to work on teams, sharing ideas, and often cases are the entertaining individual in the room. So that covers kind of the I, and that's the influencer. The S in the DiSC is more someone, who's more introverted and slower in regards to the way that they navigate the world. Not necessarily slow in general, but just slow in terms of like being more gentle or accommodating or soft-hearted. They're often, also team players, and, they kind of prefer working behind the scenes. Again, you think of steadiness, you think of, again, just someone who likes to process things. And lastly, there's the C, which has to do with being conscientious. And conscientious individuals are more moderately paced and skeptical. They're more private, analytical, logical. You can think of the C words when you think of conscientious. So there may be people who are more concerned, cautious, or want to make sure things are done from a correct place. Okay. In fact, I think of a C slogan because I'm an SC on on the DiSC spectrum. And, I would rather say, like, let's look at the details and make sure that this is correct. That's something that a C would say. And I know that because that's about myself. So that is the DiSC. Again, you can go and take an assessment. There was a opportunity to take a DiSC assessment through Ada Bible Church that we put on our last podcast. So if you want more and learn more about that potential opportunity, go back and listen to the first 2 parts of the DiSC series, just so you're aware. But enough about that. We want to hear how this thing is and can be applied in marriage. And so today we have with us 2 individuals who have who have one for sure who has been on our podcast before. In fact, this previous weekend, we released a video through our Ada Bible Men's YouTube page. And it's also on the digital bulletin at adabible.info underneath the tab Stay Engaged, where we talked to Mario Franciscotty about leading your family well. That was a 2-part series through Ada Bible Men's YouTube channel and content page. And not only do we have Mario, but guess what, listeners? We have his beautiful wife, Becky. And so I'm ecstatic to have Mario and Becky come on together. Hey, Mario and Becky.
Hey, Samuel. How you doing?
Hi, Samuel.
Oh, I am well. I'm excited. Listen, I have been looking forward to this opportunity to talk to primarily Becky, because I want to know all
Amen.
Mario, man. Like, tell me all the goods, the bads, the uglies.
We're just going to start off this disclaimer, Samuel. Everything I talked about regards to myself, how awesome I am, accountability is coming into play big time today. So,
this is going to be great. Listen, I am excited. Mario, man, I remember us going to lunch and having a conversation, meeting for the first time. Man, I was just so blessed by, your journey through life and now, getting a chance to hear also from, your other half, sometimes called your better half,
that's right.
It's going to be amazing. So I'm just excited to have you all on together today.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, of course.
We're excited about it.
Yeah, so for our listeners, while we may have gotten a chance to know each other, they may not know you both collectively. Can you all just tell our listeners a little bit more about yourselves?
Yeah, what are you thinking? Personally, professionally, both?
Yeah, let's start with both.
Okay. So I'm a marriage and family therapist. I work at Wellspring Counseling and also do business coaching. Yeah, so Becky and I have been married for 19 years and 3 awesome kids that are going into the teenage years, and I can still say they're awesome. A lot of times people say teenage years are terrible. We haven't experienced that. They're pretty awesome, but I think that has a lot to do with the investment that we've made and especially their mama and making such an investment. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome.
And us, baby. You?
I have been blessed to be a stay-at-home mother to our children for the past 15 years.
Wow.
So I was raised in the Midwest, primarily here in Michigan, in a Christian home. My work background has been primarily in social work, with a little bit in early childhood education as well.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Like, so you have not only a therapist, but you also have a someone with a background in social work. That's like the dynamic duo, y'all. Almost like you should start a practice or something together,
Right. Well, we'll see what the future brings, Samuel. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. And now I also where you both attend Ada Bible. What campus do you go to?
So over the past year, we've been doing church like a lot of folks at home, but we regularly attend Knapp
Street. Okay,
yeah,
great. Yeah. The online experience has been, a safeguard for a lot of individuals.
Yeah.
It's a blessing to have that. Some churches don't have that. And being able to go online or, go in person, especially over this past year and pandemic has been an amazing opportunity, even for me and my spouse as well. So I definitely understand.
Yeah, us too, Samuel. I mean, the thing that we've really stand out to us is just how nice it's been, especially, having these, more teenagers have some more of these in-depth conversations is, watch the sermon and immediately transition into some just amazing and deep conversations about the teachings. So that's something that we've really enjoyed, and we're continually just trying to wrap our mind around how do we keep that going once we plug back into the church and, making that transition from, mingling with folks, jumping in the car and, circling back to have that conversation. But it's been a really positive experience for us.
Oh, that's awesome. And I don't know if our listeners caught it or not, but you have how many kids and how old are they again?
We have 3 children.
Wow.
So our oldest daughter is 15, our son is 13, and our youngest daughter just turned 11.
Oh, wow. So you are in a pivotal time.
We are.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be great. I have a 1-year-old and I'm still, pulling my hair out. That's why I'm bald head.
Well, we call that phase the survival phase.
Sure.
It's great, but it gets better. That's our experience.
That is great. That's a blessing. Well, y'all, we're going to jump right on in here. I want to help our listeners know a little bit about your love story. Can you just tell us, just give us a snippet of how you all got together, why, give us the good and gushy stuff if you can, So how did you all kind of fall in love and grow from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, my eyes, from my perspective, Becky saw me and fell in love at first sight. So that's my perspective. I think Becky's perspective as a social worker is she saw a project. So
I'll tell you the real story.
Yeah, why don't you start, honey?
So just a little peek into what I believe is the God part to our story.
Yeah.
My family had I had earlier said that I was primarily raised in Michigan, but my family had lived in Indiana for a small period of time for a job that my dad took. And when I graduated from college, I graduated from Taylor University in Indiana. My parents were living in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I naturally moved and found a job in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay.
And my parents, about a year after I found this job, my parents moved back to Michigan. So I tried desperately to find a job in Michigan so that I could be with my family. And I just could not. So I finally gave up after months and months of searching. Sure. And decided to just establish myself in Fort Wayne. I had a good friend group. I had a good church community at the time. And lo and behold, about 6 months later, Mario and I met at our church. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
So I believe that God obviously kept me in Fort Wayne for a reason at that time.
Wow. Yeah, and Samuel, like a bit of our story is, Becky's family, stayed intact. I mean, she had a, father, mother, a sister, strong family unit. Mine, there was more brokenness within it, divorce and just overall just struggling to kind of pick up the pieces so. There was growth that I had to do to be able to meet and marry somebody at Becky's caliber, to be quite honest with you. But what was cool is both of us went to a college career retreat that neither of us were going to go on. And just that being part of that God story is how God has a plan. And I mean, neither of us were really looking. And just how it started off so healthy. Like it started off, and this is honestly the most healthy relationship I've ever experienced, and it was Christ-centered, to be able to be friends for a period of time and not worry about the dating, take time to kind of stand off and get to know each other. And the more that we hung out with other folks and got to know each other a bit, just saw that, man, there's a chemistry, there's a depth, and became exclusive, and it just honestly took off and was super healthy. And one of the major healthy components was once we got engaged, we were connected with a mentor couple through Becky's parents in Fort Wayne. And he was a business coach, and they were just a very, very phenomenal, phenomenal couple that just took us through the DiSC in premarital. He was a business coach and took us through it. And man, it was just worth its weight in gold to really learn the unique differences of our communication styles, strengths and weaknesses, and how those could play out in our relationship, and learn how do we use our skills for the betterment of one another versus using them against each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so crucial. I'm glad you brought it up, Mario and Becky. It's, when you're navigating and working through your love story and understanding why you all come together. Number one, for the power and the beauty of being Christians and followers of Jesus, and knowing that you want to uplift his name through your marriage. That's a crucial element.
Yeah.
And then also you said some other key things in that, and that's the power of having a great mentor, and someone who can kind of show you the ropes, give you wisdom, not interrupting your relationship, but just like, hey, I'm going to always point you back towards each other and back towards Christ. Those things are so key. And then you're bringing up the piece that we're dealing with today, and that's the DiSC in marriage, and how, him being a business coach or mentor at that point in time, kind of showed you all a little bit about your personality, which really leads me to the next question. This kind of getting even more in depth. What are your personalities, I guess, according to the DiSC, and maybe how has that impacted your marriage so far?
Yeah. So, our communication styles, I am an ID on the DiSC assessment. So I am 98% I, 95% D.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that means I'm very extroverted, but also I can transition from being friendly and fun loving and being around, being optimistic, being the center of attention. And I can transition easily into being very task, driver, step into leadership roles, but also can become short fused. So being very extroverted, what I've learned is my strength obviously is, as you're experiencing now, strength is verbal communication, but also too at times I'm not a great listener, or I can dominate. Becky's communication style, she's an S. So Becky is introvert people. And so her strength is listening, and at times doesn't have confidence in what she wants to share, especially if she's put on the spot or doesn't have the time to really put her thoughts together. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that? No?
That's all right. That's perfect. That's all right.
Yeah. So, that's what we really, that door is open for us in our premarital, and helped us really learn to see that and see that, these are strengths, but also too, if they're overused, they could be a weakness.
Sure.
And so, I could dominate her, and I could also add pressure to her in situations to the point where, I'm going to deal with it now. What's the problem? Let's fix it right now. Becky needs time to think about it, needs time to process it, and be able to come back. And when I give her that space and that time, there's such depth. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. And, we've had to really learn how to navigate that so that we create that environment, that space that's conducive for both of us.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because I think that, over the course of a marriage, there always seems to be this initial start point, right, where we start to notice things about our spouse's personality and about them and how they express things. And then there's also this kind of, I'll say point B, just to kind of draw a straight line, but it's not really a straight line because we go through ups and downs. But in it, like, there's this point B where we start to like, okay, now that I've noticed, I'm able to communicate and say, hey, I've noticed this thing about you. Or in turn, your spouse is like, hey, I see that you do certain things when you're trying to express a frustration or a issue. For example, there was a story I remember between two married individuals where, for example, one spouse, who was the husband, he saw how every time a chair was out of place or a dish was left on the table after dinner, that he kind of indirectly said things to his wife about, a day or so later. And the other spouse, the wife, was like, oh, I noticed that you do these things, but if it was important, you'd say something to me right then and right there. You'd bring it up, because otherwise, if you don't bring it up as an issue right there, as from the table being out of place, the chair being out of place, or the dishes being on the table, then it's not a big deal. But over time, what ended up happening was, as they both began to study each other, study their spouse in a sense, they started to notice over time that really it was just an aspect of expression based on their personalities. One person didn't want to cause a ruckus. The other person was like, why don't you just tell me what's wrong? But it both mattered to them. And I think that that's just a kind of a short example of noticing how how your personality and communication style interacts, Mario and Becky. And so, what have you, I guess, in that, just kind of taking this one layer, more deeper, what have you kind of just noticed about your communication style and personality over the years and how it worked with each other?
Any thoughts, baby?
I think a big thing that we've had to work through, and maybe me personally that I've had to work through, I think part of my communication style is I tend to shut down and not be willing to bring up the issue right away or communicate the issue right away. So that's something that I've definitely had to learn.
Yeah.
Is to be more vocal about what I'm thinking and maybe take a little bit less of the passive aggressive side. That's definitely been a key aspect in our marriage has been communication.
Mm-hmm.
Like we worked hard on that early on in our marriage in several different ways, but I've definitely learned that communication. And that's something that now I feel like we, as our children are getting older, finding that we're instilling more and more in them, even and teaching them to practice. It's a pretty important thing in our household in general.
Yeah. I'd even elaborate on that effective communication, right? Like what Becky was saying is, knowing that she typically more often than not would want to avoid. Mm-hmm. But man, she has grown so much. I'll be honest with you, I think she's better at, addressing the issue in the moment than I am.
Sure.
She's gotten so good at it. An element that I think that I've brought was I can shut her down and don't even realize it, like without even really trying. I remember there was a time when we were first dating and I was in seminary and we just came out of church and, Becky just asked me this question and I've shared this with clients. So if any of you are my clients, you're hearing this is old news, but, she's like, hey, what do you think of the sermon? And, I want to answer, but also too, there's probably a little bit of cockiness. There's probably a little bit, I want to show her how much I know going to seminary. And, I was like, oh, hermeneutically, I don't know if I agree with this. He said that. I don't know if that's true. And I don't know where he's going with this. And I think it was okay. What are your thoughts? And she's like, what? I felt like God spoke to me. And right then was an epiphany to me of like, dude, no matter what, she's going to know what you think because you're going to tell her. Why don't you find out first what her thoughts are so that you know how to engage to it with her without shutting her down? Because I can say, being a high D, I will just say it and I'll say it unfiltered and not really taking consideration of how that could impact my audience.
Sure.
And the worst thing I think that I could do is ever shut her down because my concern is that it would kill a part of her that I love. And that is that depth. That is that her finding the confidence to be able to share her thoughts and viewpoints that I deeply need, that I think make us very dynamic.
That's so good. And I'm glad you drew that out. Like being aware of not killing things or deafening things in your spouse that are actually probably helping you both grow. Like, there's so much more there, I'm sure, Mario, that you can just expound on. But like, even for me, I think about that and drawing that piece into my own marriage, like the power of like noticing what my wife is not only just good at, but noticing what my wife is trying to draw my attention to, or even what God is trying to draw my attention through my wife. Like, there's so much power in that, and understanding like, okay, I don't know if it's a man thing or not, but in my life, I've noticed where like, man, Lord, I can't hear your voice as clear as I want to, or I'm looking at God's word. I'm like, man, all right, these are scriptures, but I'm not seeing or hearing, what needs to come off it. And then in a moment later, literally a week or a day later, my wife says something to me about the word or something. It's like, Lord, why'd you tell her? You could have just told me.
Right.
And literally you're having these moments in your life where you're like, Lord, okay, I see that you're helping me through my helpmate, and my helpmate of my wife, and her, sometimes clarity that she hears God or that she sees God in certain works and acts and the power of it. Sometimes like, let me pay attention to what God is doing through her, because it actually ends up helping me and actually ends up helping our marriage. So that's so good, Mario.
Yeah, and Samuel, let me ask you this, because I'm curious to know Becky's thoughts as well. Like, but also too, it's not even just what your spouse says.
Yeah,
you experience it based off of how they handle themselves in a situation. I'm not saying handle themselves badly. I'm saying like how they handled themselves well, and that can be convicting to where you can kind of see them like, wow, like I don't look at how they handled that. That was mature. That was gracious. Or man, do I do that? Wow, I don't think I do. I think, man, that's something I think I need to work on or get better at. Or
all the time,
right?
Listen, like, we could be at the store and typically, I'm the more slow, methodical. Let's think this through. Do we need this? And then someone can pass by in a cart and bump our cart and automatically in that reaction, I'm like, dude, my kid is in the cart. You just bumped my cart. And like, can you watch where you're going? In my head, like, I want to see all the things, right? I want to say, dude, how dare you, but my bodily reactions and my facial features, I typically can't hide them. You know what I'm saying? But in the moment, I feel sometimes I'm in those moments that I've had, because I've had several of them over the past week. You know, my wife would literally put her hand on me, on my wrist and just look at me. It would just be like, I know you can tell because you're my wife, but maybe this is so noticeable that I don't notice it. But in moments, like, she begins to be a calming factor for me. That touch or that look of sincere empathy, or just like, it's okay. Somebody's, they ain't trying to harm you, your kid, or me. It's all good. And it's like, in those moments, like, that's me. I do that.
Spot on.
But my wife, like, it's like, wow, like, I never noticed that she like did it. And so, like, those things are for sure, man. I definitely see that every week, every day, man. Becky, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, on the opposite spectrum, I think Mario has encouraged me to take greater risks than I maybe would be willing to take if left to my own devices. So,
because of why? Like, how does that stretch you? Because what do you naturally do?
Well, I think I naturally would just lean into my own insecurities or just my introvert side. Mm-hmm. So I think Mario has stretched me not only socially, but even, in thinking about career, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely know that, Mario has stretched me, and it's, it's made me, I think, also too, to look at how do I need to help him meeting his needs, because he definitely has more of a social need than I do.
Sure.
So just learning together how to balance that need and, how to work together on the weekends, for example, when he's wanting to, entertain or do something with friends, and just balancing what do we need together and I don't know, one of the things that we have always talked about our schedule. We never make social commitments without communicating together about our schedule and what each other needs at the time.
Yeah, that's so good. That's that stretching piece, and I think just organically, probably for some of our listeners, they may be on any one of those spectrums. They may be feeling like, man, I'm being stretched, but it's uncomfortable. They may be feeling, like I need to be more empathetic, and that's uncomfortable. Or they may be feeling I need to be more, in a lack of a better word, more contentious or more of ability to step up into situations where their voice needs to be heard, And I think those are just powerful examples, whether it's mine, yours, Mario, or yours, Becky, where there's aspects of what our spouses kind of help us grow in and how they help us complement.
Yeah, and even on that, if I can say,
sure.
That's where I think the DiSC has been very helpful for us, is because it's really helped us break down assumption of what the person is doing. And it's really given us more information of, maybe there's more of an explanation or a different reason why they're doing it. So instead of assuming, maybe I need to ask to find out, versus assuming the worst in the person or assuming the worst of intention. in those different things. So that's what the DiSC has really been helpful for us in, but also too, how over time it's really grown and stretched us, like Becky was sharing, how it stretched her in that way. It also has stretched me in really appreciating downtime and really appreciating quiet. I mean, it's one of our favorite places. We live out in the country, and one of our favorite places is to, grab a cup of coffee, sit on our front porch in the morning, watch the sun come up, and just be quiet.
Yeah.
And just learning to really appreciate some of that quiet space.
Yeah, that sounds great. In fact, I would like to do that right after this podcast. Go on.
Come on over, buddy.
Yeah, man, that sounds amazing.
Come on over.
Listen, and in this, you're also touching on, how you all have resolved conflict and what you're sharing. I know in one of our previous podcasts, me and Kelly have talked about how important, active listening is.
Mm-hmm.
In order to show empathy to your spouse and that you do care. Also, we talked about, the importance of just calendaring conversations, having certain moments for certain times. If you're going to have date night. If you're going to have a conversation about what someone did wrong or how you felt wronged and what you need, then have a time for that. Don't blend both. And it's so important to have difficult conversations at those times. So I guess I just wonder, is there any other tips that you all would give, on how to handle conflict, maybe that you all have tried or that you even advise your clients to do?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that, Samuel, that comes to mind when you talk about calendaring a topic, I think one of the things that we've implemented in our marriage is just the importance of honoring commitments to each other and giving each other grace within honoring those commitments.
Yeah.
So, for example, I can give you a situation that just came up for us recently, is that we recently had been away on a vacation, and I actually still have not unpacked my suitcase. And Mario was very gracious. And, he's the kind of guy who unpacks his suitcase immediately as soon as we get home. And he was very gracious and let my suitcase sit there for a week or so, and until he finally said something to me about it. But instead of coming at me and saying, why haven't you unpacked that suitcase yet? You need to get that done. He said, I've noticed that you haven't unpacked your suitcase. Do you think that you can give me a time frame for when maybe you can get that done? Because, he's tired of looking at it in our bedroom, right? and I kind of know that that's my cue. I've learned over time to not be defensive when he says something like that to me, but that's kind of my cue that I need to also respect him and the fact that we share space and that it's also his bedroom, and that I need to be respectful and probably get my suitcase unpacked. Mm-hmm. And so I, have said I will get that done by the end of the weekend. I will make sure that is accomplished. So I feel like that has come up in several different areas of our marriage. That we've used that, mm-hmm. that if we can't meet as our spouse's expectation exactly at that time, that we try to give a commitment for when we might be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and how to communicate it graciously. I mean, that's been something that I've really tried to work hard too, because like I said before, I know I can dominate her without even trying.
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate her. I want to compliment her. And so I know for Becky, like it takes courage first. She has to work herself up to confront me on something. And so I've internally made it a point that when she's going to confront me about something, my number one responsibility is to shut up, say absolutely nothing, and just fully hear her out to understand. Now, it doesn't mean internally I'm wrestling with what she's saying, or I feel like, I'm justified, or, all this stuff does start to stir up, but it allows me, that's where, again, the DiSC has been so helpful, is I know that it takes a lot of courage to be able to bring it up. And I want to give her the floor. I want her to feel that she's being heard, And it doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with her or that I'm not going to share that I don't disagree with her. But I want to make sure that I create that space that's conducive for her to be able to know that when she shares something, I'm not going to react at her. Is that fair to say? I mean, do you feel like I do that? Or do you feel like I'm just blowing smoke?
No, I think you do.
Okay. Yeah. That's so, that's so good. And it really draws to, as we're drawing near to the end of this podcast, it really draws to the piece of this aspect of as we continually become, be married and grow in our marriage, there's this part where we start to notice, how our partners truly begin to compliment us.
Yeah.
Well, I think on the DiSC, relating back to that, there's this aspect where, you're going to notice that you're stronger in certain personality elements, like in your DID, like you said, and your wife's an S. And over time, though, what's powerful about the DiSC and what's powerful about marriage is ultimately over time, you should begin to notice certain aspects where you were, weaker at.
Yeah.
You begin to grow in those areas because of your spouse. And in those moments of growth, you're like, man, where did I get this from? Even I had those things from my wife, where she's a DI and I'm an SC, Mario and Becky. And in those moments of compliance and being steady, like I've noticed that I've become very direct and also very honest and transparent about things. Like I like to see things very done, or I've become more of a people person.
Yeah.
And my wife has been more, reserved and let's just keep it moving and growing and has become more like me.
Absolutely.
So, I think that over time, you begin to notice these things of just becoming more complimentary. And I hear that drawing out in your answers with your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, that's why I love marriage counseling. Yeah. Is because people say, Mario, how do you know God exists? Where do you see God? And I see him in marriages, whether it's marriages that are thriving or marriages that are struggling, because God uses marriage as a vehicle to grow us out of our selfishness into selflessness. We're born selfish. And so, but what I find so fascinating, like if you look at DiSC, 98% of all marriages are opposites in communication styles, just communication styles, but also they're opposites too, typically in sexuality, sensuality. They're opposites regards to different hobbies and strengths and passions. And I find it so interesting that we're attracted to that such opposite, but also too, like God does it because of we learn how to find that harmony and work together, how much more dynamic and diverse we can be as a couple than we can be on our own. If we don't learn how to use these together, how much tension and strife and difficulty it can create for you. Where, like I use the term, using your strengths and abilities against one another versus for each other. And that's a discipline. That's a practice. That's a continually learning and devoting time and energy and some resources to it to really figure it out, because of you're going to experience in marriage difficult times. Some are greater than others, but I think what makes some of these situations even more difficult, not all, but more difficult, is when you don't find or figure out how to create this environment or space that's conducive for both of you to be able to effectively interact.
Yeah. Listen, that was so rich and so good. And in this, I just want to just say thank you, Mario and Becky, for just being willing to share your life and share how you both pursue God and how you would kind of support each other and invest in your relationship, and also invest in so many couples and individuals that come across, your paths. And, just on behalf of myself and Kelly and Together, I just want to say thank you all for sharing your life with us.
Absolutely, Samuel. We're honored, man, to do this. And we just want to be an encouragement to everybody else. We don't want anybody to think that we're trying to present that we're perfect. We are imperfect. We embrace the imperfection with one another. And that's where the grace and the compassion and protecting that grace and compassion really plays into it. But we're so thankful, Samuel, for you guys allowing us to be a part of this.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, there you have it, listeners. This has been Together, and got a chance to hear from Mario and Becky, intenders at Ada Bible, but also in the mental health profession and supporting, all types of spectrums of individuals and peoples. And hopefully, if you've been, impacted by this podcast, we just want to encourage you to subscribe, share this podcast, and also leave a review. And we just want you to make sure that you're coming back every couple of weeks and listening to what we have. If you haven't listened to the first 2 parts of this DiSC series, just go back a couple of episodes and check it out on Apple or Spotify. In addition to that, make sure you, if you have any questions, you can email us at care@adabible.org, and we'll get to those questions. And also leave us some recommendations of things that you want to hear and listen to. So again, for Together, this has been Samuel, and we hope to hear you and see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for listening to Together. We hope that you've learned a thing or two. If you find the podcast helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like more information on Ada Bible Church and its ministries, or someone to pray or dialogue with about your marriage, email us at care@adabible.org.